When I saw that video this week at the church, Maylin and I, we had to call a plumber because there was like water leaking all over underneath me during watching the video the first time. If you are a dad in the room, I hope that video you play on repeat in your head this week and let it be the fuel that helps you to keep going as you father your children, as you love and lead in your home. Before I even start today's sermon, though, I feel the Holy Spirit reminding me that today is just a very complicated day for a lot of people in this room. I know there are people in here missing their fathers. There are those in this room who've never had a father. There are those in this room that have had very difficult fathers. And there's those in this room that have had incredible fathers. Can I just share some of reality with everyone in this room? If you are a Christian, which means you've given your life to Him, you have been adopted by the Heavenly Father. How do I know? Because the Bible tells me so. 1 John chapter 3, verse 1. Listen to these words. See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God. So my charge to all of us in this room is to keep going, to keep trusting, keep hoping. Heaven is real, and heaven is forever. What you may experience today is, in comparison to heaven, very short. Keep your eyes on Him. Keep going. And if you are a dad in this room, be the best dad ever. Do not waste your fatherhood. All right. With that being said, dads in the room, we have some beef jerky and some sunflower seeds for you to enjoy after today. The moms, they get flowers on Mother's Day. We get beef jerky. But it's Slim Jim, which is like the Walmart of beef jerky, but it's it was in the budget, okay? So enjoy your 25-cent Slim Jims on the house. I briefly want to say, one, sign up for pickleball. We're looking for just more opportunities for you guys to get to know each other. So if pickleball is your thing, come. It's going to be at Ben and Liz Curdy's house. You know the Curdys. They're an incredible couple. They've graciously let us use their ranch. They have like professionally installed pickleball courts. And then you'll also notice in the announcement video that we are going to slightly adjust the service time to 10:15 instead of 10. And don't pick it at me, no torches. There is a reason for that. It is a very important reason. And that is to provide more of an opportunity for you guys to get to know each other in between services. Oftentimes, whoever's preaching that first service, I don't know who it is, but they're kind of long-winded sometimes. And, there's like, our service times in between turn into a high-bye. I don't want that for us. There's 168 hours in the week. I want you more than 3 minutes with each other. And so that 15 minutes is going to provide more fellowship opportunity, but it's also going to help us to have a fuller service. And I'm not trying to add to the service. I'm trying to make the service longer, but sometimes our 8:30, I have to pull a worship song, or we have to pull an important video, or I have to really shorten my sermon to make that 8:30 fit. So this is going to help that. All right. Hey, let's begin. This is our week 3 of 8 weeks of Heroes of the Faith. And I really want to make sure that we are all on the same playing field here. When I say Heroes of the Faith, I'm not saying we do not turn them into saviors. And we do not idolize them. We do not praise them. We're going to look at some glimpses of their heroism, but may it all be a reminder to us that it is Jesus who is the real hero. He is the one with no flaws. We're going to look at Gideon today. We're going to see some of his flaws. Jesus has 0 of them. You'll also notice this is our 3rd hero in a row that's been in the Old Testament. Week 1 was Joseph. He's surrounded by all kinds of chaos. Sold into slavery by his brothers, living behind enemy lines, put into prison. And then last week we had Esther. Do you remember Esther? She's also living behind enemy lines. She's in exile. Not only that, but she's forced into a marriage of this rage monster guy. And then this week, we're going to look at Gideon. And Gideon, he's also surrounded by enemies too. I don't know about you, but I'm looking at my Old Testament going, come on, Old Testament, this is grim. There's a reason for that. Can I tell you something? The Bible actually correctly diagnoses our hearts. Have you ever been diagnosed with a condition before, and so you go to the doctor and they tell you your diagnosis? Can I tell you that all of us in this room have a bunch of different physical hearts in this room. Some of you have very active and healthy hearts, and some of you, maybe you have a pacemaker, you're taking heart medicine. Everyone in this room has a very different heart. However, did you know spiritually, all of us in this room were born with a very similar heart condition, a spiritually heart condition. Let me share it with you. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it?" It's not just sick, it's deceitful. And it's not just deceitful, it's deceitful above all things. It's the most corrupt thing ever. You might go, ouch, that sounds kind of harsh, but it's true. And by the way, I'm thankful that our Bible doesn't just have one testament, it has two. There's a New Testament. Jesus, did you know our Old Testament not only diagnoses us and says that we have a really sick heart, the Old Testament also gives us hope. Because God told them in the Old Testament, but don't worry, I'm going to perform a heart transplant on you. Have you ever been a part of a heart transplant, not a heart transplant, but any organ transplant? Well, that's what God does for you. When you become a Christian, did you know that he gives you a brand new heart? He takes your heart away and gives you a brand new one. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 26, it's not a slide, but listen to this. "And I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you." That's what Jesus does. He removes our heart of stone, and he gives us a new one. So why bother having the Old Testament if it's just filled with all this awful news? Because today you're going to see some more awful news. It's because it is God communicating to us that apart from Christ, there is no life. No Jesus, no life. It's as simple as that. But did you know that to know Jesus, K-N-O-W, is to know life? Give your life to him, and he'll give you an abundant life back. Jesus changes everything. Do you know he gave me a brand new heart 26 years ago this month? I got saved in the year 2000. That was, I think, God being really nice to me, because math is hard, right? 2000, 2026, 26 years. Our series has now taken us into the Old Testament 3 weeks in a row, and perhaps maybe we need this reminder that we need Jesus. Let's not live in the Old Testament. My sermon in a sentence is this. And by the way, here's what a sermon in a sentence is. It's just my cutesy way of saying, if you don't get anything, please get this. I hope you get more than just this, but please at least get this. And here's my question to all of us. Is God able to use your little life? Can God really use you? That's what we're going to talk about this morning. My sermon title is The Little Leader That Could. And before I pray for the service, can I just give you some family news? Number one of our dear own went to be with the Lord. Her name was Joan Grant. Joan went to be with the Lord. She was a faithful, sweet senior here at the church. She had not been at the church for a while. She'd been a shut-in over at Grand Oaks, but she is now with the Lord. She got the aim of her faith. I don't have any service details, but at the moment, I do want to tell all of you to just be praying for the Grant family and for her friends. And then number two, would you continue to pray for Lonnie Hooper? Lonnie and Linda are up at Stanford. Lonnie is recovering from a really difficult surgery, and he's facing a pretty uphill battle with some complications. So now let me pray for them, and then we'll get into our sermon. God, I thank you for Linda and Lonnie. Thank you, Lord, for their love for this church and for our family. Lord, I just pray right now as you continue to hold Lonnie in your hands, that Linda and her family would continue to look to you. God, most of all, I thank you for Lonnie's faith. I thank you that he loves you. God, we would love for him to still be here, but Lord, we also trust you. But Lord, would you please heal our brother? We ask that of you. We pray these things in your name. Amen. All right. Hey, let's go to the Lord this morning. We're going to be in Judges chapter 6. We're going to cover 3 chapters, and that's why I'm not going to have a kid read today, because that's a long time to stand for 3 chapters. But let me give you I've broken up these 3 chapters into 3 points. Point number 1 is this: an unlikely leader. An unlikely leader. That's chapter 6. Let me give you the context here. Judges chapter 6, verse 1 says, "The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian for 7 years." He had told them way back when they became a nation. They just entered the promised land. They have the book of Deuteronomy and Leviticus, really difficult books to read. But he told them there would be blessings for obedience And there's going to be consequences for disobedience. God kind of sounds like a parent, right? Do you bless your kids when they disobey you? I hope not. You're setting them up for failure. There's consequences for disobedience and there's blessings for obedience. Well, the consequences for Israel is the Midianites have now taken their land. And when I say taken their land, I mean they took their land in a really difficult way. I'll talk about it here in a moment. But for 7 years, the Israelites, they became cliff-dwelling people. Imagine if the Fresnoites took out Tulare and Visalia. And by the way, the Israelites were agrarian. If you're a Fresnoite, I'm not meaning any disrespect at all, so you're cool. But if you're from Fresno. But imagine, you're here in Tulare, Visalia, Hanford, Lindsay, and you're growing your crops. But then every year, right before you harvested these crops, the Fresnoites came and they took it all from you. That would get a little boring after a while. That would be really frustrating. That's what's going on here. The Midianites would swoop in when it was harvest time and take all the crops. Talk about frustrating. They did this for 7 years now. And so the people of Israel, they're crying out. And by the way, God is going to answer their cry, but first he gives them a warning. It's Judges chapter 6, verse 10. He says this. He sounds just like a dad. He says, I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You should not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. He's saying, there's a reason why this is happening, Israel. Verse 11, here's what happens next. God is going to be so gracious. He's going to rescue them once again. By the way, the book of Judges is this really sad cycle. The people sin, they cry out, they get in trouble, they cry out to God, they promise they won't do it again, they live prosperously, and then they sin again. It's this vicious cycle. That's the whole book of Judges. It's a really sad ending. In fact, the very last verse I'll share with you at the very end. It's really sad. So they're living in this really sad cycle. But the angel of the Lord comes anyways. It's Judges 6, verse 11. It says, now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth. Do you guys know what a terebinth is? Well, if you're a pistachio farmer, you might, because the terebinth tree is a cousin of the pistachio tree. They're very, very similar. Same shape and size, and I don't know if it's a variety or species or whatever the term is, but they're very close to each other. So imagine you're out in your field, and underneath one of your pistachio trees, an angel is talking to you. That's what's going on here. The angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, the Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor. Now, I think that's a pretty hilarious thing for the angel to say, because Gideon, if you didn't catch it, Gideon is hiding like a wimp, doing his chores. Why is he hiding? Because he's doing his chores because he doesn't want the Midianites to steal his wheat. So he's concocted this very frustrating invention in order to get the wheat out of it because he doesn't want the Midianites to steal his wheat. Now, Gideon, here's how he responds. In verse 13, and Gideon said to him, please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Do you hear the whiningness? Well, that's in my tone, but that's what I'm trying to get across. Gideon is whining. Why, God? Why is this happening to us? I'm sick and tired of this. Why is he sick and tired? Because his invention does not work. This is a lesson in futility. Did you catch it? He's beating this wheat in a wine press. Okay, in the Old Testament, here's what it looks like to beat the wheat, to get the chaff out of the wheat, because you don't want to eat chaff. Do you want chaff in your food? No, you don't. You want the grain. And so this chaff was very light. So when you beat it against the ground or beat it against a rug, all that chaff would float in the air and the wind would take it. And then all the heavy grain would fall. But that you would really rely on wind for this to happen. It actually reminds me of Psalm 1, verse 4. Psalm 1:4 says, the wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. That's what the wicked are like. God is going to take care of business, and he's going to scatter them away. Now, to thresh wheat, you need this wind. Well, it doesn't take a meteorologist to know that no wind exists inside of a bowl. And Gideon is in a giant bowl. He's in a wine press. Now, when I think of wine press, I think of one of the best TV shows on the planet. This one. You guys remember I Love Lucy? That's like the most clearest version I could find because there was no such thing as high def back then. This is I Love Lucy, and what is she doing? She is smashing grapes in a wine press. It's a super funny episode. I love Lucy. My wife and I, we watch it. My girls love it. My Graham, not so much. He's like, there's no color. He's like, you should just rename the show I Don't Love Lucy. That should be the name of the show. Graham is a ham. Well, imagine you're in this wine press. By the way, it didn't really look like this. Let me give you one that Israel would use. Here's a wine press. You're deep down. You're in that circle. And instead of smashing grapes, which is what you should do in a wine press, you're hitting this wheat against the ground, and this chaff is falling along with the wheat. Can you imagine how frustrating it would be to pull the chaff away from the grain? Chaff, grain, chaff, grain. Very frustrating. And so when the angel talks to Gideon, Gideon's like, come on, why do we have to do this? All right, you guys got the context? Here we go. Now, Gideon, he's a little bit of a wimp, but it's understandable. I think we'd be doing the same thing too. These Midianites and these Amalekites, they were like locusts. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. Look at this. Check this out. Judges 6:3 says, for whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. Oh, these guys are sneaky. They let the Israelites do all the hard work, all the irrigation, all the work. And as soon as it's time to eat, they swoop in. And they would encamp against them and devour the produce of the land as far as Gaza. That's all the way down to the south of Israel. And leave no sustenance in Israel, and no sheep or ox or donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents, and they would come like locusts in number. Both they and their camels could not be counted, so that they laid waste the land as they came in. When I think of locusts, I think of this movie, the second coolest Pixar movie ever. Remember those guys? Bug's Life? These kids, they just swooped in and steal from the ants. That's what the Amalekites and the Midianites were doing. They're swooping in and stealing from the Israelites. Well, okay, the angel, he says to this wimpy guy, he says, what's up, you mighty man of valor? You brave warrior? You soldier? What's up? I cut Gideon off mid-sentence with his complaint. Let me finish it for you. Here it is. It's Judges 6:13 that says, and Gideon said to him, please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us, and he's given us into the hand of Midian. You can just tense, or you can just feel the tension with him. And the angel, he basically says, cool, Gideon, I'm not going to waste my time answering that, because watch what he does next. He just doesn't even respond to that. It's Judges 6:14, and I don't have it in my notes, so I'm just going to read it to you. Here it is. And the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you? By the way, can I just tell you, that changes everything. He's saying, I am commissioning you. When God asks you to do something, you become unstoppable. Not because by anything that you are, not because of your talents, not because of your wallet, not because of your ancestry, not because of your self-discipline. You become unstoppable when God says, I'm going to use you. Verse 15, and he said to him, please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my father's house. You know what he's saying? Okay, remember last week we talked about the Benjamites. Well, the Benjamites were the smallest tribe. Well, the tribe of Manasseh were the weakest tribe. And he's saying, I'm the weak of the weak. Well, the Lord said to him, but I will be with you, and you will strike the Midianites as one man. A lot can be accomplished when God is with you. By the way, that's why it's very important to live according to his will. You want to live into your own will, you're going to have a life of futility and frustration. You live according to God's will, it's going to go a lot smoother for you. And he said to him, well, if now I have found favor in your eyes, then show me a sign that it is you who speak with me. So he basically says, okay, prove it. Prove it that you want to use me. Prove it to me that you're God. He says, oh, hold on. Please, verse 18, please do not depart from here until I come to you and bring out my present and set it before you. And the Lord said, I will stay till you return. Gideon basically says, BRB. And he went and he goes and he gets some steak. Let me show you this. This is really fascinating. By the way, he's not responding like Isaiah. Do you remember Isaiah responds, here I am, Lord, send me. He's not responding like Mary, the mother of Jesus, who when she was told to be used by God, she pondered these things in her heart. No, Gideon is responding, saying, Lord, prove it. Prove it to me. I think he's trying to get out of it. That's why he's saying he's from the weakest tribe. He's like, God, you might want to check your numbers again. I'm not the guy. Why is God using this little guy? Well, I'll let you think about that. But think about that for a minute. Why is God using him? If you know your New Testament, you know that our New Testament says God uses the weak to shame the strong. God's not backing down. He wants to use this little leader. Our guy, he's tiny but mighty, but he doesn't know it yet. Check this out. He goes, you remember he tells the angel, like, hold on, BRB. He goes and gets some barley cake, and he gets a steak. Check this out. Verse 21. Then the angel of the Lord reached out the tip of the staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes. He puts this meat and the cake on a rock, and he waits for God to consume it with fire. Like, you go try that today, I promise you it's just going to stay there. But he's talking to this angel of the Lord. And watch what happens. And fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cake. And the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. Then Gideon perceived that he was an angel of the Lord. And Gideon said, Alas, O Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But the Lord said to him, Peace be to you. Do not fear. You shall not die. He's saying, Gideon, get it together. I have a mission for you. You are going to destroy this altar that my people have built to worship false gods. And then you're going to build a new altar in my place. He's going to give them a mission. He's going to tell Gideon, the Israelites, they had been worshiping false gods. And they made this altar to Baal. They made this with their own hands. And he says, I want you to destroy that. Do you think Gideon does it? Well, he does. But again, our guy's a little wimp. He does it by night. And I'll show you this. Judges 6:27 says, So Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had told him. But because he was too afraid of his family and the men of the town to do it by day, he did it by night. Well, now we know why he's afraid, because the next morning, people are livid. You destroyed my altar? They're livid. Check this out. Verse 29, Gideon's dad gets involved here. And they said to one another, Who has done this thing? They look at the pile of rubble. They're like, who messed with our idol? Who broke it? And after they had searched and inquired, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Then the men of the town said to Joash, Bring out your son that he may die. For he has broken down the altar of Baal and cut down the Asherah beside it. But Joash, this is Gideon's dad, said to all who stood against him, Will you contend for Baal? Like, you're actually going to fight on behalf of this rubble? Check this out. He's pretty smart here. He says, Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down. Okay, in modern language, it's go get the popcorn, pull up a lawn chair, and let's watch and see if Baal is going to rise up again. He's saying nothing's going to happen. It reminds me of Elijah. He did the same thing with the prophets of Baal. The prophets of Baal tried to conjure up Baal to respond. Baal doesn't do anything. Why? Because he doesn't exist. He's man-made. And Elijah says, I think your God is in the bathroom. That's basically what happens. I think he left. Well, they watch, nothing happened. And they began to think, perhaps Gideon is our guy after all. Perhaps Gideon is not so crazy. This little act, though, is not the main point. Now they're starting to follow Gideon. And not only that, but the Midianites and the Amalekites, they're starting to bring up their army again because it's harvest time and they want some more food. The battle is about to happen. This little leader that could, who tore down this idol, maybe he can be the one to take them out. Now, Gideon begins to gather an army. Look at verse 33. Now all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east came together, and they crossed the Jordan and encamped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon, and he sounded the trumpet, and the Abiezrites were called out to follow him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, and they too were called out to follow him. And he sent messengers to these other tribes. Here they are, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. And they went up to meet them. So he's starting to build up this big army. But then Gideon sees the amazing, huge Midianite army, and he says, God, can I ask for one more sign? I'm not so sure this is a good idea. And he does. You can read that sign on your own, but it's Judges 6:36 through 40. This is Gideon with the fleece. But let's continue to move on as we see what happens next. So that's an unlikely leader. Now let's look at number 2, an unlikely strategy. An unlikely strategy. That's point number 2. Gideon assembles this mighty army, and they rise early, and they're ready to take on these bad guys. By the way, you want to know how many people they are? They number 32,000. 32,000. Basically gets half of Tulare involved and says, we're going to take out the Fresnoites. So Gideon, he's feeling kind of good about this. Like, maybe we have a chance. We got 32,000 of our biggest, baddest dudes. Judges 7, verse 2. Then the Lord said to Gideon, the people with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hand, lest Israel boast over me, saying, my own hand has saved me. You see, God really knows the human condition. He knows the heart condition. And he knows that if he lets this army of 32,000 and God uses this army to destroy, they're going to look at themselves like they're the big bad guys, like they're the heroes. We're not the heroes of our story, guys. We're not the heroes of our story. Jesus is the hero. And so God is going to do something very unlikely. But let me just remind all of you that your victories actually belong to the Lord. They do not belong to you. Any victory that this church has experienced over its 139-year history, it all belongs to the Lord. It doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to our staff. It doesn't belong to all of our volunteers. Every victory that this church has received, it all belongs to him. He gets all the credit. Did you know someone this last week became a trillionaire? I don't think they're in the room. If they are, I have a playground I want to talk to you about. And Maylin has 14 other projects that she wants to talk to you about. No, we all know who it was. This guy became a trillionaire this week. And can I just tell you something? You may become a trillionaire one day, and you still cannot pay for one sin. Only Jesus can do that. Only Jesus can pay for your sins. Now, the Israelites, they get themselves into this mess. They have 32,000 people. Check this out. See what he does next. Here's what God does. Verse 3. Now, therefore, this is God telling Gideon, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead. Then 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. He just shrunk it by 2/3. Can you imagine that? You're Gideon, and you're having to say this. If you're scared, go home. And 22,000 of your people go home. Now we're down to 10,000. Well, guess what? God says, even 10,000 is too much. And he's going to shrink it down to 300. He shrinks it down again to 300. Can you imagine being Gideon? You had 32,000 people, and now you're down to 300? Check this out. Judges 7:8. So the people took provisions in their hands and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, but retained the 300 men, and the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. Well, let me show you the size of the bad guys. So it's 300 versus how many? Look at verse 12. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east lay along the valley like locusts in abundance, and their camels were without number as the sand that is on the seashore in abundance. It's just an incredibly high number. And do you want to know actually how small they are compared to this big camp? Well, one of these soldiers, one of Gideon's soldiers, has this dream, and it's actually a very funny dream. He has a dream that basically it's called a cupcake, okay? A little loaf of bread, that this little loaf of bread fell down on the Midianites and the thousands and thousands of perhaps hundreds of thousands of people, and this little piece of bread wiped them all out. It's a funny story. It'd be like if I had a cupcake and I threw it at all of you, and it took you guys out in one shot. I wouldn't do that because I like you guys, but last service, one guy was like, that's great, I get to eat a cupcake. Well, check this out. Here's the dream. Judges 7:13, when Gideon came, behold, a man was telling a dream to his comrade, and he said, behold, I dreamed a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian and came to the tent and struck it so that it fell and turned it upside down, so the tent lay flat. And his comrade said, this is no other than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. God has given into his hand Midian and all the camp. Well, Gideon hears this story, and he's actually encouraged. I don't know, I'd be a little offended, like, God, are you calling me a cupcake? But Gideon's like, aha, another sign. This really is going to happen. We really can take these guys out. Look at verse 15. As soon as Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshiped, and he returned to the camp of Israel and said, arise, for the Lord has given the host of Midian into your hand. Well, if you know your Old Testament, do you remember in the book of Joshua? Joshua and his men, how did they take out Jericho? They take out Jericho they just march around with trumpets. It's a very unlikely strategy. Well, check this one out too. Gideon does this. Judges 7:19. So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch when they had just set the watch, and they blew the trumpets and smashed the jars that were in their hands. So they have trumpets in one hand, and they have these jars probably with a bunch of rocks in it. They're shaking these jars in another hand. Check this out. Then the company blew the trumpets, and broke the jars, clash. And they held in their left hands the torches, and in their right hands the trumpets to blow, and they cried out, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. So basically, 2 a.m, all those bad guys are snoring, and Gideon and his little band of 300 make this ruckus. Well, guess what? They all leave, and I'll show you that. Number 3, an unlikely result. An unlikely result. By the way, it took extreme faith. This is where I want to give some props to Gideon and these men. It took extreme faith. Can you imagine being one of these 300? You're not given a sword. You're not given a bow and arrow. You're given a torch to see. You're given a trumpet. And then on your belt, you have a jar with rocks in it. It's pretty incredible. It's another reminder that this is not about them. It's actually not their battle. It is God who will fight for them. They must have faith. God will carry them through that. You see, this whole story here is actually not about Gideon. It's about the Lord. He's the mighty Lord of valor. Number 3, an unlikely result. So the army makes all this mumbo jumbo, makes all this noise. They shout, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. And then look at verse 21. Every man stood in his place around the camp, and all the army ran. You check that out? They didn't even have to move. It's not like they even chased the bad guys out of town. They just made all this noise and watched everyone run away like wimps. Well, that's not the unlikely result that I want to talk to you about. Actually, the unlikely result is shortly thereafter, this incredible battle, Gideon blows it. He blows it. Our Bibles talk about it. He had this moment of heroism, and he let it get to his head. Here's what he does. Judges 8:24 says, and Gideon said to them, let me make a request of you. Every one of you, give me the earrings from his spoil. Can you remember those guys that left town? Well, they left all their stuff behind. So he's saying, give me all the golden earrings. For they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, we will willingly give them. And they spread a cloak, and every man threw in the earrings of his spoil. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold. You guys, this is extremely heavy. Also, what else is with it? Beside the crescent ornaments and the pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Gideon, and besides the collars that were around the necks of their camels. And Gideon made an ephod of it and put it up in his city in Orpha. And all Israel whored after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his family. He let the dollar bills get to his head. He let the words of praise get to his head. Well, it gets worse. After Gideon dies, you want to know exactly what happens right after Gideon dies? Judges 8:23 or 8:32 says, and Gideon the son of Joash died. He died in a good old age and was buried in the tomb of Joash, his father, at Ophrah of the Abiezrites. As soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again and whored after the Baals and made Baal Berith their god. My wife at the spring tea, she told all the ladies, she loves a good happy ending book. Like that's her jam, is to, just read a good book with a good ending. I don't know if Judges is going to be a good book for anyone that likes happy endings then, because there's no happy ending here. Actually, the happy ending comes in the New Testament. Really, the sermon title could be The Little Leader That Could, but could have done more if he understood that God deserved the credit. But that's just too long to print in our bulletins. Ronald Reagan, one of my favorite presidents. I'm a history nerd, and I love our nation. And one of my favorite presidents is Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan has this. He said this: "On my desk in the Oval Office, I have a little sign that says there is no limit to what a man can do or where he can go if he doesn't mind who gets the credit." Now, can I actually flip that sign for our church just for a moment and say this? There is no limit this church can do if this church doesn't mind that God gets the credit. I think that's the main lesson that we should get from Gideon, is give God all the glory for every accomplishment that you have. Give it all to the Lord. It's all his. It's his feet. The fact that we have actually this sad ending, it actually encourages me. It reminds me that man did not write this book. If man wrote this book, they would have left out all the bad parts. This Bible tells me that Abraham blew it. In a moment of desperation, he gave his wife to another man. Moses, it exposes Moses' weakness for pride when he struck a rock that God clearly told him not to strike. This book reminds me of Elijah's lapse of faith. He thought he was all alone. This book reminds me of King David's betrayal. This book reminds me of Peter's denial of Jesus Christ. This book has the good and bad and the ugly because man did not write this. God wrote this. And if man were writing the story of Gideon, he would not have reported that sad ending that I just shared with you. John Butler, thank you, Pastor Ron. By the way, we have a pastor among us who's been going to our church now for a while, who just became a member. Ron and Judy, they're a faithful couple, been pastoring in Strathmore for years. He's now semi-retired, and he worships here with us. Ron's in the back. You guys should say hi to him. Ron gave me this book to help me with my sermon preparation. And it's by John Butler. And John Butler says this: God records both the negative and the positive of our heroes, and he does it for our needed instruction. Their virtues are described so that we may imitate them, and their vices are depicted that we may avoid them. That's why the Bible has the good and the bad and the ugly. For Gideon, he did not protect himself from spiritual failure after a spiritual victory. So I just want to make sure that we protect ourselves. Do you want to protect yourself from spiritual failure after a spiritual victory? Then do these three things. Number one, it's in your bulletin. Number one, though, is this: don't become the standard of right. Don't become the standard of right. Remove from your temptation that this is your universe and this is your story and this is your life and that you get to dictate how it goes. The very last verse of the book of Judges says this. Judges 21:25. Bryce is going to sing us a song here in a moment, but Judges 21:25 says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." If our society becomes this way, you're just going to add a lot of chaos and confusion to it. Submit to God's version of right and wrong. Number two, don't rob God. Don't rob him of his glory. Church family, if you want to be used by God, then you must be committed to giving him all the glory. No one tries to rob God of his glory and gets away with it. John Piper says, the danger of self-promotion is that we rob God of his glory and distract people from the big L Lord of the universe with our small L lording over creation. Robbing God of his glory is equivalent to this, don't look at him, look at me. And that's a very serious sentence to ever say. Isaiah 42:8, here's why it's a scary sentence, because Isaiah 42:8 rightly ascribes this, I am the Lord, that is my name, my glory I give to no other, nor my praise to carved idols. Like Joseph, we talked about this a few weeks ago, we don't want to sit in God's chair. He doesn't sit in a recliner. He sits in a throne. He's the rightful king and Lord of our lives. Don't become the standard of right, and don't rob God of his glory. And then number 3, this is something we do, and it is this, fill your heart, not your head. Do you want to be used by the Lord? Then give not your head to him, but also give your heart to him. The most effective way of not robbing God glory is to willingly give him glory. Well, how can we fill our hearts? Be committed to live a life of worship, not just a Sunday of worship. Of course, we worship here on Sundays corporately, but you are called as a Christian to worship God Monday through Saturday individually. You're to live a life of worship. When you do that, it's really difficult to give yourself all the glory when you're in the middle of giving God all the glory. And be in your word. Psalm 105 verse 3 says, glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Seek the Lord in his strength. Seek his presence continually. Remember the wondrous works that he has done, his miracles and the judgments he uttered. Psalm 115 verse 1. This is a modern day song that we've sung now, which is this, not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory for the sake of your steadfast love and your faithfulness. Will you fill your hearts? Will you let God use you? Will God use your life? Can God use your little life? The answer is resounding yes, but you must daily give your life to him. You must, with a posture of your life, say, God, this is yours. All of it's yours. My home is yours. My family is yours. My wallet is yours. My talents are yours. Lord, I want to walk in your will, not my will. I'm going to invite Bryce up, and we're going to sing a song called Take My Life and Let It Be. I just would ask you to please stand as we sing. You can do that now. But turn this song into a prayer. Ask God to use your life. I'll come up and I'll pray and close this out. Thank you, Bryce.